Continuing our year-end wrap-up show, we're focusing on the cattle markets right now with our livestock specialist, Dr. Derrell Peel. So Derrell, we started the year dry, and it looks like we're going to be ending the year very dry.
You know, the drought has been the main story in 2022, and it continues as we go into 2023. We're not sure where we go from here, but you know, certainly from the standpoint of what's happened in cattle markets in 2022, the drought has forced us to continue liquidating cattle. Cow slaughter was up over 12% for the year. Heifer slaughter was up nearly 5%, and so that's you know, that temporarily boosted beef production to yet another record level in 2022. You know, cattle numbers actually peaked in 2018 to 2019, and yet we're still seeing record beef production, and that's because we've extended kind of the turning point here because of the drought. So, you know, we've had lots of issues in that respect. We've kind of postponed what's going to happen here, but when we do get to that point, it's going to be more dramatic.
Before we get to what's going to happen eventually with this, how is you know, cattle liquidation? What was that situation like throughout the year, given the drought in both the, you know, the late winter, early spring, and then in the summer?
You know, we had significant cow liquidation all year. It was surprisingly strong all year, and that came out of 2021 with you know, with an increase in cow liquidation. So, you know, one of the stories here that sets up you know, where we go from here is the fact that we've had 2+ years of herd liquidation. There's sort of a cumulative effect there in terms of the animal numbers. There's also a cumulative effect in terms of the feed situation and the pasture and hay situation. And so, you know, we've had a lot of struggles. Producers have had a lot of struggles, and that's why they've had to continue liquidating cows all the way through 2022.
So, you know, looking ahead to 2023, focusing on the drought for 2022 and the impact, you know, a lot of producers aren't probably going to be able to graze wheat pasture. So what are those impacts for those producers, for stocker cattle producers mainly? What are those impacts going to be?
Well, you know, as we start 2023, you know, we had a tough start with our wheat situation for winter pasture in 2022. We finally got some wheat up. We've gotten little dabs of moisture. We may eventually get a little bit of grazing, either for stockers or for cows, but really not a lot. And I think, you know, a lot of people are just trying to figure out, or most of them have figured out what they had to do to get through the winter. And I think, you know, really as we look forward, the real question is going to be, what does the spring bring? Do we see any change in these drought conditions, in the La Nina weather pattern that gives us any hope for a better growing season next year? You know, some producers may still be making adjustments to get to where they need to be to get through the winter, but I think most of them are trying to look ahead to, you know, what maybe we can hope for next year.
So really high beef production to end 2022. What are the impacts going to be with that, you know, that extremely strong beef production going into 2023? You said 2 years, it's not sustainable. So what does that mean?
We're going to see a fairly dramatic turnaround in this market at some point, and because we sort of extended it kind of artificially because of the drought impacts, I think the turnaround is going to be fairly dramatic when it happens. So we're going to see beef production drop pretty significantly, even if we don't see a lot of improvement in the drought conditions, just because we have less cattle now. So we may continue liquidating, but there just won't be as many cattle to liquidate, and so we'll start to moderate those cattle supplies even more. If we do see improvement in the drought conditions, then we're going to try to start rebuilding. And that's going to have a dramatic impact on beef production because we're going to save a lot of heifers, we're going to stop culling cows, and we'll see a fairly dramatic decrease in beef production, in cattle slaughter and beef production, and that's going to set up you know, sharply higher prices across the board. Cattle numbers are going to be tight, and so we're going to continue to see very strong feeder and fed cattle prices through 2023 and beyond.
And for prices on the consumer level, how is that going to shape up?
You know, 2022, we had relatively good beef demand, even with record production. We go into 2023 and we see a sharp drop in beef production. Less supplies implies that we'll see prices go even higher. Consumers clearly have a lot of challenges with inflation and lots of issues affecting them, but there won't be as much beef, so we'll see higher prices just to ration that smaller supply of beef.
All righty, thanks, Derrell. Dr. Derrell Peel, Livestock Marketing Specialist here at Oklahoma State University.